Hello and welcome to another edition of the Entrepreneur Playbook. I'm Phil D'Amico alongside my co-host Matt Hunsberger, where each and every week we look at those issues that are facing entrepreneurs today. And this week's program, we are so pleased to have Mark Melnick with us. Mark is the Executive Director of Strategic Workforce Partnerships for the South Bend-Elkhart campuses of Ivy Tech. It's great to have you. Last week we had the Chamber on, and they were talking about workforce development is such a key issue for businesses today, also recruiting businesses today. So your timing is perfect, by the way. I don't think there's anything you could do that would screw this show up. I do that every week, but it's great to have you. You know what's interesting, so in 2008 we had the downturn in the economy. A lot of people used that opportunity to kind of reassess their personal and professional skills, said, what do I need to do? What are some potential areas I could look at? Through this pandemic, has this been another time for individuals to kind of reassess their workforce needs?
So yes, I think the landscape in the job market is changing. And just make one comment, the 2008 recession was caused by market conditions.
Sure,
This was not caused by market conditions. This is an external force and actually has produced some different things. So we have recurring themes from employers that, they can't find people who are engaged, they can't find people with certain employability skills, emotional intelligence, plus the lack of technical skills. And as you know, a lot of businesses will also use this time to reevaluate where they are in terms of staffing and skill. So I think that the smart person would be looking at, where do I sit? If I can't find a job, then what am I doing that isn't right? And so when we look at what's going on now, we look at higher skill sets, we look at the application of technologies. We have things like Industry 4.0 technologies, which are revolutionizing manufacturing, even in those industries like RV, which are traditionally manual. Some of the big players like Lippert and Ford, all of these are moving into automation. And so what is happening in the job market is the nature of work is changing. Work isn't going away, but if you're in one of those heavily manual jobs, for instance, I use the example, I don't need a guy to load a pallet anymore. A robot will do that for me, but I need that same loyal worker to somehow transform into the guy that knows how to operate the robot and how to program it, and look at that. So I think that's what's happening. All of these new jobs too that are created do not require four-year degrees. I think some people have the idea that if I'm going to go back to college, it's 4 years of tough going, but they aren't. There's a lot that only require credentials. Some post-high school learning is definitely part of it, but that could be a credential, a certificate, could be a 2-year degree, could be an apprenticeship, could be any workplace recognized credential in the marketplace. So there are lots of opportunities that are available now, and there's money from the state of Indiana to upgrade yourself, so it isn't going to be a big cost.
And that's where I guess a big role Ivy Tech would play. And all of those you talked about, whether it's a 2-year degree, certification program, trades, whatever it is, Ivy Tech can be kind of a clearinghouse, so to speak.
Yes, so the state has a program out called Next Level Jobs, and if you look up Google Next Level Jobs, you'll come to their website. So these are higher skill, high demand jobs throughout the entire state, and there's lists of them under various sectors: manufacturing, construction, healthcare, and so forth. An individual can apply for up to $10,000 in training money to assist in the cost. Ivy Tech is a big player in this field. We're probably the largest training provider within this field to get those credentials. So
that's $10,000 grant, is it?
it's a grant. It's not payable.
Okay. And how would they find out about this?
So I would go to that website,
Okay.
nextleveljobs.org, I believe. And you can start the application process. There's also a flip side of that website for businesses. So businesses can now apply for up to $100,000 in training money to assist in training incumbent workers within their organization.
So a manufacturer can take advantage of this particular initiative?
They can.
It's pretty interesting.
very
Yeah.
interesting.
So
Yeah.
part of this revamp happened about 3 weeks ago. There was a bunch of money that the state was awarded through the CARES Act. And so they recently doubled all these figures. It used to be 5,000 per individual and 50,000 per company. And I believe until the end of 2020, it's doubled to 10 and 100,000.
Wow.
So this is the time to jump on the,
These are all critical for an entrepreneur, right? To hear about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're looking at trying to bring in people that are qualified to do whatever job you need them to do, but also as a business owner, looking at the opportunity to train those that are already there. $100,000. That's a big deal.
It goes a long way.
Oh my
yeah,
gosh, yes,
absolutely.
yeah.
So you have that initiative. What are some other initiatives maybe that Ivy Tech is looking at that could really benefit an entrepreneur or their business?
so obviously technical training is what we do.
Sure.
Ivy Tech has, of course, academic programs, but we're most well known for our hands-on tech stuff. So whether that's automotive, diesel tech, we're really moving into the area of advanced manufacturing. I'm sure when the chambers or other people have been on here, they've talked about the Lilly Grant and Notre Dame, $42 million in this, the South Bend-Elkhart Regional Partnership that is involved in that, as well as other agencies. So Ivy Tech was awarded about $1 million from that grant, and we are building, as we speak, an advanced manufacturing technology lab at the Elkhart campus.
Really? Wow.
So, this is a 10,400 square foot building that will be dedicated solely to robotics, PLCs, integrated manufacturing lines, and whatever. We believe, and of course the premise of the Lilly Grant is that this technology is going to sweep through our area, and it's disruptive to the labor force that we have. I think a Brookings report indicated in 2019 that our area stands number 3 out of 384 centers to be impacted by automation
Really?
and robotics.
Wow.
So the need is there
Absolutely.
to upskill our workforce, and this is our response to this, is to get working with companies.
What's interesting, you talk about robotics, you talked about the advanced manufacturing. These jobs are what, $20 an hour maybe, or somewhere near?
Anywhere, I would say a high, well-qualified maintenance tech that could work on all of that would be pushing $30+
Is that right? Wow. These are all skills that you would think
Oh.
for an entrepreneur, I mean, would be huge, right,
Oh,
to hire? Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, you're looking at people that are skilled in all different things. I mean, from electricians to plumbers to mechanics, all these things. I mean, these are all skills that I had before I became an entrepreneur.
Right.
Now, I was a plumber by trade right out of high school, right? So my dad was a mechanic. So these are all things that kind of came into play for me, and then my business came about. So, having people with those skills underneath you helping you, it's just huge for your business.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, entrepreneurs, they're so busy, and Matt can attest to this, running their own thing, they don't know of a lot of the programs that are going on. It seems like now there's a real focus from Ivy Tech, especially in your role, to get out to businesses to really let them know what's going on.
Right. So we have a new initiative at Ivy Tech called the Career Coaching and Employer Connections Department, and that's been an internal response to, some of it is to do with the governor's workforce cabinet.
Sure.
Really this idea of being able to coach people, bring real world skills into their education experience, and then to partner with entrepreneurs like Matt and
Sure.
say, what kind of skills do you need? How can we help you
Yeah.
solve that? Part of that is 2 new workforce consultants that we have in the market, so they're interfacing directly with businesses. I interface directly with some businesses, and we're working at solving that puzzle.
Sure.
In addition to that,
Well, real quick, I want to get,
Yeah.
before you come in, you talked about hearing what type of skills they're looking for. What are those skills, by the way?
so I would say employability skills are number 1. I can't tell you the number of businesses I go into.
Right.
If I could only find someone who shows up every morning, or I could only
Sure.
find
Be on
some,
time.
and be on time. So workability skills are at the top of anybody's list. I don't care what field
Sure.
you want to go into. If you can prove yourself to be a person that's engaged in the business and that you're going to be reliable, you'll go every place you ever want to go in the business world.
Right.
Technical skills, typically, most people can be taught technical skills. So that's the second part of it. But I would say employability skills is probably the number one thing we hear.
And it's still a tough time to find individuals.
It is, yes.
Okay.
Even with millions of people unemployed,
Sure.
it seems that the number that are interested in upgrading themselves technically and then proving to an employer that there's someone that they should have on their team is increasingly a challenge for businesses to find.
What are you looking for when you hire as an entrepreneur?
You know, we talk about employability, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, as coaches, let's go
Right.
back into our coaching background, we always told our players, be the player that I don't want to take off the floor, right? I mean, that's the guy that's doing the little things. So
Right.
I think as an employer, I'm looking for those little things you just talked about. I mean, as simple as it is, will you be here every day? And will you be here on time?
Right.
And then are you willing to learn? I mean, I think those are the top three things for me.
Where does this start, though? It seems like when they get to Ivy Tech or a four-year school or wherever they go after high school might be too late. Is this something that, Ivy Tech and or the high schools need to focus on?
Yes,
or-
so I think that part of the career coaching department that we have are several outcomes. So, learning how to do a resume. For some people, it'll be dressing for success.
Sure.
Others, it's how do you do an interview with a business. So Ivy Tech's student population, we reach segments of the population that I don't believe many four-year institutions get to. Often they're first-time college.
Sure.
They might come from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, and so the parents or peers have no idea about what college is all about. So we have to supply these extra support services to our students to help make them successful, and I'm pleased to say that we're doing that. And then as part of it, we're looking at how do we integrate work-based learning experiences. So we'll go to a Matt and we'll say, Matt, would you be open to having an intern, for instance, for a period of time? If you start an apprenticeship in your program, would you look at sponsoring a college student to get that kind of technical training? So I think that in the American marketplace, what we've done is somehow we've divorced education from the workplace. And Matt, as a plumber, that's the exact opposite. In an apprenticeship, it's the blending of theory with hands-on practice. And so we need to get back to that within our education system. And Phil, to your point, yes, we need to start in high school. So there are, I think there's an initiative, the governor's work ethic certificate that high school students can earn. We're blending that with project-based learning and work-based learning experiences within the high school market so that they become better prepared as they move into college and or the work field,
Sure.
as an example. So.
Yeah, Mark talked about the hands-on. I think that's a critical aspect, right? Having hands-on training and
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, as again, growing up as a mechanic's son, I had that. I mean, that's just, we worked in the garage, we helped my dad, so I had that
Right.
experience. But I think, today, I think one of the things we talked about in our last episode, I think there's a gap here too. A four-year degree is great. I did not have that when I started my company. I have it now because I see the value in it. But I think the hands-on aspect, if you can get to the kids in high school, get them involved in this stuff early, then maybe they start to say, I got a talent here. This is something I actually enjoy doing. I don't have to go get a four-year degree. I don't have to be a computer tech. I could be a mechanic or a welder or even a plumber.
Yeah, what's interesting, I just saw this, read this in the Wall Street Journal the other day. They talked about today, they say 80% of all high school graduates need some form of post-high school
Post-high
graduate.
school.
Yep, whether it's a certificate, 2-year, 4-year, whatever. There's a lot to believe now. Manufacturing is going to come back to the United States that we lost to China through this pandemic and through a lot of what has transpired. If that's the case, they said you're probably looking closer to 90 to 95% is going to require some form of a high school, whether it's certificate, again, 2-year, 4-year. Do you see this trend as well?
Yeah, so we've seen some of what we call reverse college students. So
Sure.
these are people with 4-year degrees that are coming back to
Right.
Ivy Tech to get something in a practical skill, whether that's a certificate or
Sure.
an additional 2-year degree. And that's a recent change in the Department of Workforce Development, the next level jobs. It used to be if you had a degree, you could not apply for that funding. And they've changed that rule now that people with 4-year degrees can
Wow.
jump in on that wagon as well.
So what are the hot jobs right now? What are jobs that individuals might look at? If you either coming out or coming back into the workforce? What are,
So I think IT is one of the ones at the top of the list. If COVID has taught us nothing else, businesses had to turn on a dime from
Yeah.
brick and mortar
Yep, no
businesses
doubt.
to virtual, right? And so everybody faced some enormous challenges in how do we do virtual. And so the need for IT programmers and customer service people and all of that has shot through the roof. So we do have an IT sector partnership here in South Bend-Elkhart region, and that's exactly what their mission is to help people who don't have those skills to earn credentials. In some respects, four-year degrees in IT are going away. By the time an educational institution can get that put together,
right?
it's out of date.
Sure.
So that particular industry tends to be moving more towards individual credentials, and you can learn or earn these short-term credentials. Google has an online program out, for instance. Ivy Tech has short-term CompTIA certs and other things that you can do to get meaningful employment instantly in this job field. Healthcare is another huge issue. So COVID has taught us that we really don't have enough medical people. So,
Sure.
And it's in the lower ranks, I think, more than anything, but CNAs, LPNs, RNs, you know, I think even institutions are recognizing now that it's great to have four-year Bachelor of Nursing Science people, but those are going to be the administrator kinds, and the really hands-on job are some of these lower credentials that are easily winnable. Advanced manufacturing is being swept away with new technology. So if you've heard the term Industry 4.0, it refers to, we're in it, but it's the fourth industrial revolution. So
Wow.
it's about the application of digital technologies, virtual reality in manufacturing, digital factories, big cloud data and analytics, the integration of not just a cell with a robot in it, but a whole assembly line. We have a plant in this area that is up and running now. There are only 8 people per shift.
Wow.
5 of them are techs, 3 are operators, and it's all automated.
And I think that's one of the misnomers, I think, with people still, even today, and it's a hard message to get to individuals. Today's manufacturing, it's really not manufacturing, right? It's technology, basically.
It is technology, artificial, machine learning, all of this is coming into
Sure.
play. And so,
And by the way, you have a background in manufacturing, correct?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So
So
you-
I've
you
worked
see
for
this.
a large German tier 1 auto supplier all over the world. We made parts for just about every car company in the world. And it was a really great experience for me to see what's happening in other sectors. How Europe is addressing the skill need is quite different than what the American education system is. We've taken 2 trips to Germany and to Switzerland to look at how their apprenticeship programs and their high schools work, and trying to bring the best out of that and work within the American high school system.
Yeah, so virtual seems to be a big part of education now. Where does that fit into, so online education, where does that fit into, Matt talked about hands-on.
Right.
Maybe not as easy virtually, but maybe it is, I don't know.
So there's a lot of, I think there's no question that COVID has now opened up a national debate on how we do education.
Sure,
Right.
yeah.
So even before COVID, Ivy Tech was about 50% of our courses were available as an online option.
Okay.
And so for some people, I did an online postgraduate certificate, and it certainly has its positives and it has its negatives. So to Matt's point, I really have a hard time trying to teach someone how to weld. And as good as a set of goggles is, you don't have the heat and you don't have the splatter, you
Right.
don't have the smoke.
So many variables there.
And the number of variables.
Yep.
So there are certain things that I think are well suited for that. At Ivy Tech, going into the COVID, and our fall session has just started. So depending upon the course, it'll either be totally virtual, it will be a hybrid. So automotive mechanics, for instance. What we used to do in a classroom in terms of theory teaching now becomes an online e-learning session.
Okay.
And then face-to-face with proper protection and social distancing, they come into the auto shop to actually work on the vehicle and learn the process. And then there are some things, perhaps more notably in the healthcare section, but there's no way to avoid face-to-face.
Sure.
You've got clinicals and everything else that have to be done. So it just depends on the piece. We have had some students be very resistant to online, and these are what I call tactile learners. These are guys that learn by doing hands-on. You put them in front of a computer screen and they rebel because it's not the way they learn,
Right. Yeah.
right? And we're trying to force people into methods that don't fit their learning style.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful about recommending what kind of learning for what individuals.
So it's adapting to the individual.
It's adapting to the individual.
Yeah, and your kids are going online education, right? So
Yeah,
it's
I
a
mean,
big
we
part of it.
homeschool our kids anyways, but I mean, that's how they learn. So,
Right.
and my son is kind of like what you're talking about. He is more of a hands-on guy. He wants to take it apart. He wants to put it back together. He wants to analytically figure it out that way. So different from my daughter. So
What's
everybody's
interesting
different.
though is to Matt's point, kids today, whether it's high school, college, or in his case, elementary age, they're not afraid of technology.
They aren't.
They are not, right?
They've grown up with it.
They've grown up with it,
Absolutely.
right?
I've
And
read
so-
studies where psychologists, learning psychologists will tell them their brains are wired differently than ours.
They are, yeah.
And they are. They are just incredible.
They pick it up a lot easier.
So what are some things, one of the challenges we've heard, obviously, in this region, and I worked in economic development for a number of years, is that it's really hard to, A, retain, recruit, attract, and keep your talent here. Is that still a challenge, or are you guys addressing some of those needs?
So yes, I would say that those continue to be interesting points. We work, of course, closely with the chambers and the EDCs of
Sure.
the area to present that, if you've got a business, you're going to locate here, we have the training to train the workforce. Overall, as a region, we have not achieved the same level of high school completions, degree completions, those kinds of things as other areas, even within Indiana.
Yeah, Indiana's challenge as a whole.
So, and Indiana
Yeah.
as a whole is challenged. So
Yep.
when we look at neighboring states, then the
Right.
difference. So we do have a lot of work in terms of what that means. I think that we have some grassroots thing going on now with middle school and high schoolers. So in Elkhart County in particular, and also in St. Joe County, they do manufacturing days. So they take middle school kids and high school students and they run them through buildings so that, it's easy to look on the outside of a metal building and say, well, I don't know what goes on there. When there could be, certainly in cases here that we have in Michiana, world-class, global,
Yeah.
leading edge technology being used, but nobody knows it.
Right.
So it's getting the word on the street. The needle is starting to move. Kids are realizing that they don't necessarily need that 4-year. And an increasingly large part of the conversation is the cost of education.
Yeah, absolutely. What I do think is interesting is it used to be educators would tell government, we got this, you don't need to play in our sandbox. City officials would say, okay, we got it, don't play in our sandbox. But I think, whether it's workforce, education, or government, I think those entities are starting to understand that all three have to be synchronized when it comes to this talent and workforce development issue. Are you seeing that? What role maybe does an Ivy Tech play in that?
Yeah, so we partner with a number of different organizations, and I personally think that our region, right at this moment in time, has a unique opportunity to start to create a really interesting ecosystem. So what we want to do is be able to supply a career pathway for people, but that be flexible enough whether, if a high school student could graduate with a workplace ready certificate, for instance, and if that's their goal is to go into the workforce for a while and earn money, or continue their education part-time, right? And if they want to get off the highway, so to speak, they can do that, jump back on, they haven't lost anything, and continue on right through to 4- and 6-year degrees if necessary. For adults, we're working with Work One, Goodwill, South Bend Bendable,
Oh, yeah, sure.
all of these platforms that are being directed. And so we're looking at how can we help prepare those students to get ready to do some kind of a college experience. Ivy Tech, I think, is well positioned to start an education career. Number one, our tuition is the most affordable in all of Indiana. And number two, that many of our 2-year degrees do transfer to 4-year institutions. some as a 2+2. So you finish your 2 years here, you go on to a 4-year, and you're junior when you
No, that's
register
big.
that.
Yeah,
It
that's
is.
huge.
So it's in conjunction with IU, some with Purdue, and those,
Sure.
and economically halves the bill of what education.
Got about a minute left. I do want to find out what are some of the next and best steps for those to take advantage of some of these things you talked about. Is it on your website? Maybe give us some of those websites again.
Sure. So you want to look at next level jobs. We'll give you the hot list of what's out there. ivytech.edu will get you into the process. I would say start the registration process. Start it now. Get in and make an appointment with a career coach specialist who can help guide you if you're unsure of what you want to do. You know, start with your passion. Get a career assessment done. So if you're passionate about this area, what are the kinds of jobs that you might be good at? What does the credentials look like for that? Do you need a degree? Do you need what if you're going to be a welder? The American Society of Welding, for instance,
Sure.
would be a good thing.
Yeah.
And then start looking at how are you going to craft your education. And lastly, I think Phil is exactly the same. You know, make sure that you're blending some kind of work-based learning experience as you're taking those classes. If you're looking for something, ask South Bend-Elkhart at ivytech.edu, and that will get you into the system to answer financial aid and everything else that needs to happen.
Well, this is great. We'll have you back because we could have done 3 hours on this.
Yeah.
So we appreciate all that
Pleasure to be here.
all that you're
Thank you.
doing in the community as well. So thank you, Mark. We'll keep a close eye on ivytech.edu and see what's going on there. We end our segments all the time with the top 4. We do a Mount Rushmore. This week, our top 4 is top 4 career and tech ed jobs. I'll let you start.
I'm going to start with the plumber. It's near and dear to my heart.
I've got CNC machine operator. Maybe give us one of your top 4.
I would say maintenance,
Maintenance.
industrial maintenance.
Oh, that's huge.
yeah, it's
I've
huge.
got welder as number 2.
Yeah, I went with mechanic.
Mechanic. Yep.
Yep, auto tech.
Auto tech is
I do
another-
have number 3 as my auto tech.
Okay.
Real short. Is there quickly maybe your number 4?
Diesel.
Diesel.
Diesel tech is another one.
I've got
that's
plumbers,
big.
I went
electrician.
with an electrical power
Yep.
line tech.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Lineman,
much
yeah,
for the work
lineman,
that
yep.
you're doing.
Thank
Matt
you.
and I greatly appreciate
you,
on
Mark.
behalf of us as entrepreneurs saying thank you to all the work you're doing for the workforce. So
Thank you for the opportunity.
that's it for this week's edition of the Entrepreneur's Playbook. I'm Phil D'Amico alongside Matt Hunsberger. Thank you for watching. Make it a great and safe week, everyone. Thank you.